Tshwane, back on the streets, but certainly back in the commission, which is just to my left-hand side. Another day of really compelling testimony from Crime Intelligence head Dumisani Khumalo. Some names have emerged, and I want to get straight into it with Eldred de Klerk this morning. We'll get to Stewart James Sharnick in just a moment, but certainly someone who's going to have some questions to answer. Eldred, good morning. Is going to be Sergeant Nkosi, who's actually based here in Pretoria at the police HQ. Because he has been described by Dumisani Khumalo as being the bag man, the guy who goes and fetches the money. He's the go-between between Lieutenant General Shadrack Sibiya and these alleged crime bosses. This is both Vusumuzi Katmatlala and KT Molefe, recounting and sharing CCTV footage yesterday, placing Sergeant Nkosi at KT Molefe's home only 10 days before that dramatic takedown event, leaving with a large white bag. So I almost want to paraphrase and say this story yesterday was about white bags and dustbins, because he mentioned a dustbin in which alleged 200K was placed at Sibiya's office for other events and other things that were meant to happen. What do you make of this testimony? And we keep going back, Eldred, to the need for corroborating evidence and verifying 100% that this is what we are being told it is.
Good morning, Iman. And yet at the same time, we all know the expression, pictures never lie. And here we have moving pictures with stills and an account, and yet a admission that we don't know what's in the bags. It just looks suspect. It's something that happens consistently, and we have both the vehicle, the time, and we have a recurrence of this event of bags being moved around. So that all tends to add up to at least the suspicion that Sergeant Nkosi has something to answer, and he has to come in answer. The risk we run, Iman, the more names we hear, we run the risk of saying, oh, there's a few bad apples in the South African Police Service, rather than thinking, because my thoughts now along the way, and I'm sure we're starting to galvanize this as a country, is that maybe it's just not a question of one bad apple, but rather that the barrel itself is actually rotten.
And that's so concerning, because this is testimony that corroborates other testimony we heard from some of the witnesses who chose to give their evidence in camera about these repeat payments, not only to alleged payments to Lieutenant General Shadrack Sibiya, but others who are senior and high up. And so there is a pattern beginning to emerge.
Absolutely. However, Iman, we've got to bear in mind, and I was just casting my mind back to previous conversations where we started looking at other national commissioners and people at the senior position in the South African Police Service. And I was thinking of one particular one, Khomotso Pashlani, who already faced similar charges of fraud and corruption and contracts being undermined and being in cahoots with people around contracts and then cancelling contracts. This was in 2020, Iman, and he got dismissed for misconduct. And the South African Police Service didn't wait for the criminal charges against him to galvanize and for him to be formally charged. So, and then he tried to fight to get his job back. So we've been living with this repeatedly, and it's something that keeps occurring. So the more we look at this, the more it starts to really started thinking about, is this, as I said, just a few bad apples? Or is it that we now need a more comprehensive approach to addressing the systemic and structural issues within the and cultural issues within the South African Police Service? And it's more than just vetting people and making sure we appoint the right people, because even the right people in the wrong job or in the wrong environment can be corrupted, also can fail. So, Iman, there's a lot more to the story than just the individuals who will be named. We really got to start looking at the institution and how the institution is actually diseased.
I want to come back to a thought that Jeremy Vieri and yourself have homed in on over the last few weeks, Eldred, as we look at all of this, and given your background, right from when the old the security branch of police and the democratic police service had to merge. Not all of those officers disappeared, and some of that culture would have come in as well. The culture that we saw during apartheid, one of covert operations, secrecy. Of course, we know that any police operation, even in a democratic context, will have aspects that are not always in front of the public eye, and they have to be classified or kept behind the veil, so to speak, for security reasons. But there's a lot of systemic issues, culturally speaking, that have also seeped into the police, a subject we don't talk about much when we talk about what's going on here. We just kind of suspended or impaled by the daily revelations. But the systemic issue certainly must be one that we talk about. And one of the ideas the both of you had floated was the need that a lot of you guys are talking about for the possibility even of police being placed under administration, and that it doesn't have to be such an alarmist thing. This can be something that still allows police to operate, but while at the same time rooting out the cancer.
Well, thank you, Man, and thanks for the reminder, because the police is a public institution that conducts a public enterprise. So any public institution, whether it's Transnet, whether it's, you name it, the ones that have already been placed under administration. The police itself can be placed under administration. And we have in that the example of Mayor Khan, who was brought in the late 90s to come in as part of the transition, as part of the change management team, to almost act alongside the DG as a chief operation officer. And he came from business and industry, and his role was to try to help the senior management facilitate a cultural and structural change within the South African Police Service that more aligns with democratic practices. We've seen systematically over the years the erosion of those efforts to pull the South African police force into the 21st century and make it accountable to a civilian authority. In fact, it's that exact fight between who are you accountable to and who actually sets your agenda and who gives you the lines in or draws your lines in the sand. Is it the minister? Is it the national commissioner? And this is where we are today. We're still fighting that very same fight. And those same similar questions were raised yesterday in the ad hoc committee. And we'll probably get onto that. But yes, we can place the South African Police Service under administration. We have the example of Mayor Khan. He was a single individual brought in. That experiment made some changes, didn't long last enough, and it was also met with significant resistance. We can put a committee in place and then use that to leapfrog and bring in what the National Development Plan 2030 says, which is the National Policing Board. We still don't have a National Policing Board. So when we look to what the president and the cabinet can do and the minister can do immediately, that's one of the options they have on the table. They don't need Madlanga's recommendation to do so. It's already there. It's agreed to by cabinet. Parliament has agreed to those recommendations. Get on with the job.
I mean, I'm really desirous, Eldred, to really bring in the issues around Brown Mokgotsi, but I want to linger on this topic just a little bit more. Based on what we're hearing, and let's face it, this is just one aspect, one geographical, let's say, region. KZN is in sharp focus because of the PKT, KZN as well. Johannesburg, Gauteng actually also a part of that. These hearings are centering around a few select individuals who make up what we understand to be the alleged Big Five cartel. Is this alone, and this is only a small part of South Africa, so imagine what's happening in other places. I mean, we're not even talking about the Western Cape, where we know gun running, drug cartels, gang activity, those things are really high. We're just talking about here, but based on what we are already hearing, there's enough cause for alarm to say that there has to be an entire shift in what happens with the police going forward.
Absolutely, Iman. We've been talking for years about the SAP 13 stores, that's in complete disarray. We speak about the fingerprint, biometric, forensic labs, all these registers, the sexual offenders register. We don't seem to be able to get any of things functioning and working in the 21st century, where technology is an aid to putting those things in place and keeping it in place. We continuously have challenges in court, and we haven't even spoken about the disconnect between and the problems that the justice cluster and the judiciary has with police evidence. For example, we have issues of change of evidence. We see corruptions of evidence. We see dockets missing. So, and whether that's a child a rape case, or whether it's a gun running case, or whether it's a drug case. So the problems are pervasive, it's endemic, and it's institutional. So the country doesn't need convincing that there's something needs to be done about the police as an institution and the judiciary as a cluster. So is the conversation already headed in that way? I'm more and more convinced when I look at the public's response to Madlanga and to the ad hoc committee that people are desperate for an intervention that will finally bring us a democratic, professional, competent police that is beholden to the law, upholds the law, and actually accounts to a civilian authority.
I've got Grace to ask you one quick thing, and I must ask you about Brown Mokhotsi. Where is he? What do you think of what you've seen unfold overnight? Witness accounts painting a very sketchy picture of the alleged hit.
Well, Iman, with you and I yesterday, it was a throwaway comment that maybe he did this himself. You know, who would know that we wake up this morning and maybe that isn't actually what in fact happened. He seems to be getting the hashtag Mr. No Show at the moment. And I'm not convinced, just on the face of it, that he's going to show and present himself. He considers himself a wanted man. In fact, he is alleged to have said to people on the scene yesterday that I'm wanted by the police. So he doesn't buy this thing that the police simply wants to get hold of his gadget and devices and want him to present himself. He's convinced that should he present himself to the police, he will be arrested. So maybe, Brown Mokhotsi, hashtag no show, is already going to be trending.
Eldred de Klerk, always fascinating. Well, let's see. The hours ahead will certainly be instructive proceedings here. If you're heading off for your day, kick off at exactly 9:30, 2 hours from now. Speaking of which, 7:30 exactly.